Hello friends! Today's video is all about wall art. Sourcing it, framing it, hanging it, and of course, gallery walls. After my home tour video, I did get several questions about this gallery wall here in my living room. So I'm going to share some information about how I went about this, and I'm going to give you some of my best tips on how you can create a gallery wall of your own. There's lots of information to cover here. Let's get right into it. Now, obviously, if you want a great collection of art on your walls, you're going to have to find that art. And there are a ton of sources out there. If you've got the money to invest in gallery quality fine art, then that's awesome, but that is not the reality for a lot of us. The good news is you don't have to spend a lot of money. You just need to get a little creative. So now I'm going to give you the grand tour of my gallery wall. I'm going to share where I found all this stuff because my sources are pretty varied. So starting up at the top, we have this piece, a great example of not spending a lot of money. This was a picture frame that I am pretty sure I already had on hand and just wasn't using. And the art inside it is a fabric sample, just a swatch I had kicking around. Here we have this painting that I found at Goodwill, and the frame on it was a brighter gold that I wasn't really fond of, so I just used some rub and buff to sort of tone it down a little bit. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're thrifting and you see a piece that you like but the frame is a little questionable, there might be something that you can do to make it better. Or alternatively, if you find a great frame and you don't like the piece of art that's inside it, you could always buy it for the frame and change out the art. So these sconces, well, technically these are not art. I might as well talk about them because they are on this wall. So these are a couple of vintage sconces that I found on eBay. I think they're actually technically supposed to be pendant lights, even though they were listed as sconces. And they did not have any electrical with them or anything. They were just like the frame and the glass. And a couple of the pieces of glass were actually missing, which worked out fine because I didn't want the back piece of glass, because that's the spot where I've actually attached them to the wall. So I am not hardwired for sconces here. So what I've done to light these is just used a couple of rechargeable LED bulbs. So these ones that I ordered from Amazon actually come with a magnet. So I've just attached one side of the magnet to the wall, and then I'm able to just pop the bulbs in and out of there when I need to charge them. So moving back up to the top, we have this concert poster from a spoon concert that I went to several years ago. So if you are someone that likes to go to concerts or any other sort of like live performance where they are selling posters, you can actually find some really cool posters out there, or you can look for vintage ones. Again, a really great, very affordable source of art. Here we have this Bauhaus print. Now this is a print that I ordered off of Etsy. So again, very affordable. I liked the print, I liked the color. Nothing more complicated about it than that. Now this circular piece, this is just a wooden tray actually that I've painted. So I had a couple of these. I painted one of them black and one of them white. I was using them in combination with a mirror somewhere else in the house, but wasn't using them anymore. And I wanted something to just sort of break up all of the squares and rectangles on the wall, and this just kind of worked. This little piece here, Adrian actually made this for me back when we were first dating, so another little sentimental piece. This piece here is metal, and I bought this years ago at Pier 1 Imports, and when I bought it, it was like multicolored, it was kind of shiny, I think it was a bit metallic. I actually wasn't a fan, but I could see that it had potential. So I spray painted it in this matte white, which just completely changed the entire look. And again, I like that it just breaks up all of the squares and rectangles. It brings, you know, some depth and a little character to the wall. All right, what else have we got up there? So this piece here, this I'm pretty sure is a HomeSense frame, so nothing expensive. And then the art itself is just a digital download that I found on Etsy. I wanted something that was, just kind of simple and graphic and would sort of tie together a few of the colors that are going on in this gallery wall, and this just kind of worked. So this piece right behind me here, this is a vintage paint by numbers that I found at a local antique store. And I think I have mentioned in other videos that I do really like vintage paint by numbers. I think there's just something kind of charming about them, and I think they make a great addition to a gallery wall. Here we have this red S, which again is another piece that I've had for quite a long time. I really like the graphic quality of stuff like this. Sometimes you can find like vintage neon signs or, vintage letters. This is not vintage, but I liked the style of it. I liked the color, and I picked an S because my mom and my dad's first names begin with S. So just a little tribute to them. So this black and white piece, this is from HomeSense. I don't typically like buying mass-produced art from places like HomeSense, but it worked for what I needed and I caved. What can I tell you? And this gold frame here, this I'm pretty sure was an IKEA purchase. It came with a mat, but the mat was not the right size. I already had this existing wedding photo of ours that I wanted to use. So I ended up going to Michael's, and you can actually buy really inexpensive, like pre-cut mats at Michael's. And so I just bought a couple of mats in 2 different sizes and I layered them, and that's how I was able to make the photo fit. This little buffalo print, this piece I found on Society 6. Several years ago. It was in my condo and it moved with me here, just like a lot of these pieces, and I still like it, so here it is. And then our last piece, this is a Keith Haring print. It actually is Adrian's. I'm not sure where he bought it, and it is just in a simple IKEA frame. I think that's an IKEA frame. It's IKEA or HomeSense. Anyways, I have not really spent much money on any of these frames. So that is everything on my gallery wall, and I think the lesson in this is to have an open mind. Just about anything that you can put in a frame, even some things you can't put in a frame, can become art. You just have to think outside the box a little bit and view things from a fresh perspective. Even the most basic of pieces can look amazing if you frame them well. This is something that you can do on a bigger budget, or you can keep it super economical. There are times that investing in custom framing is worthwhile, and getting to know a great local frame shop that you trust is a really good idea. A knowledgeable frame shop can advise you on what products to use and can give you some great ideas for frames and mats that you may never have even considered. If you have a piece of value, whether that be monetary value or sentimental value, having it framed by a professional ensures that you're going to be showing it off to its full potential and that you're going to be keeping it properly protected. Now, on the other hand, if you have a piece that is not of any value, then an economical store-bought frame might just be the way you want to go. You can find them at tons of different places. IKEA, obviously, Amazon, HomeSense, Michael's. But if you are going to buy a frame at Michael's, either buy it on sale or have a coupon. Do not ever pay full price for a frame at Michael's. Thrift stores, another great source for picture frames. And sometimes they're great and ready to go just as they are. Other times you might want to just give them a coat of paint or a little rub and buff, and then they're good as new. And don't be afraid to get a bit creative with your frames. Try a colorful frame or matting, or add a painted stripe. You can also look at using some fabric. Interesting matting can really elevate a simple piece of art. There are a ton of colors out there beyond just white. And I also like to experiment with the size and the placement of matting. moving on to what might be one of the most challenging parts of this process, placing your art, because knowing what to hang where, not always easy. Scale, of course, a really important consideration. Art that is too big or too small can really throw off the sense of balance. The most basic guideline is that a large wall needs larger art and a small wall needs smaller art, but there are a lot of exceptions to this. Playing with scale can actually lead to some unexpectedly great outcomes. Like the idea of a small piece in a large space. This can be especially impactful when there is color or pattern involved. The entire wall becomes part of the composition instead of the art being the main focus. And then there are times that overscale art can actually be quite cool. Now, I know that large pieces of art can get a bit pricey, but there are ways to do this on a budget. One option is to frame a smaller piece with a really substantial mat. Or you can combine a series of pieces to give a similar effect to one large piece. Another affordable way to go about this is with some DIY. This piece I used to have up in my nook, and I made this just by purchasing an inexpensive tapestry from Society 6 and then stretching it over a wood frame that I had made. Now, I fully acknowledge I did not do the best job of making the frame. There are lots of tutorials out there that can show you how to do it properly. I've also seen this done with shower curtains or with an interesting printed fabric. Now, if you're not really trusting your carpentry skills, another way that you could go about making this is using artist canvas stretcher bars. Now, what about where to actually physically place the art on the wall? Rule of thumb is that you usually want the center of your art at eye level. Now, if you are a really tall person, you might not want to use your own eye level because things could start getting a little bit high. And hanging art too high is actually one of the most common mistakes that people make. You want to err on the side of hanging your art a bit low. So if you look at sort of 57 to 60 inches above the floor, that's usually a pretty safe guideline. If your art is being hung above a piece of furniture, so say a sofa or a bed, leave a few inches of clearance. You want some breathing room around your art. Now, the exact amount of space you leave, it does vary depending on the size and the visual weight of the art, so do what feels right. Another general guideline is to center your art on the wall, but there are also exceptions to that. Sometimes hanging a piece off center can be a cool option. Again, you want to think of everything on that wall as part of the composition. So that art might not be centered over the bed, but placing it off center might actually do more to balance the overall composition. And again, if you're using overscale or underscale art, placing it off center can actually look more interesting and intentional. As someone who has had to hang many pieces of art as part of my job, I've learned some tricks over the years to make it a little bit easier. And usually what it comes down to is using the right product. I'm sure we're all very familiar at this point with Command Brand and their plethora of products. These can be really helpful, especially for renters or just for anyone who's like my husband and really hates putting holes in the wall. So when we did the gallery wall for Adrian's office, he used command strips for everything, and they have all been holding up really well. As long as you're adhering to the guidelines for how much weight the product will support, you're good to go. Now, I am a little less concerned about putting holes in the walls, much to Adrian's frustration. And one of my favorite products to use are these monkey hooks. They don't require any tools. They're great if you're dealing with anything that's got a wire or rings on the back, and they hold a pretty substantial amount of weight if you don't have a stud. I'm also a fan of these bear claw style screws. These can hold up to 30 pounds in drywall without needing an anchor. And my new favorite product, especially for hanging really heavy stuff, these 3M claws. I used these recently to hang a pretty heavy mirror, and they were really simple to use and they worked really well. The other great thing about these is they only attach to drywall, so it doesn't actually matter if you've got a stud there or not. These are genius. I'm going to add some of my favorite picture hanging gear to my Amazon storefront. So if you want any more information on any of these products, the link will be in the description. Okay, my friends, the time has come. Let's discuss gallery walls. Now, why do I love gallery walls so much? I just naturally find myself drawn to spaces that have interesting collections of art. They're great focal points. And unlike the immediate impact of one large piece of art, a gallery wall sort of invites your eye to stay and linger a little longer, to really explore everything that's going on. I also think they're just a great form of self-expression. An eclectic gallery wall with a mix of unique, personal, and sentimental items can tell you a lot about the people that live there. So these are some photos of my old condo where I lived before I moved in with Adrian. And as you can see, I had a few gallery walls. I had one in the hall, one in my office, and 2 in my living room. Now, in hindsight, might have been overkill. You don't have to have gallery walls in every room, and you maybe don't need to have more than one per room. But I will say that I actually did really like having the 2 gallery walls in the living room. Every space is different, so do what feels right for you. Now, other than our home offices, this is currently the only gallery wall that we have in the house, but I am considering adding one to our staircase. Staircases, empty corners, hallways, entries are all great spaces to consider a gallery wall. Okay, so how to actually go about creating a gallery wall? First of all, take your time. You do not need to rush to fill every square inch of wall. It is okay to hold out for pieces that you really love. Or if you're feeling really impatient, you can have placeholders. Like sometimes I will hang a frame with something really basic in it, knowing that I can swap out whatever's in that frame when I find something better. And my next tip is, don't be afraid to really mix it up. For me, the more variety in a gallery wall, the better. I love using vastly different art and frames. So experiment a little and have some fun with it. If you are concerned about it feeling too random, try using color as a through line. Having a few common colors repeated throughout the pieces can help bring a sense of cohesion, even if the pieces are very different. And if a really eclectic look just isn't your style, you can keep things more uniform by using one color for all of your frames. I would still vary the sizes and styles of frames though. Otherwise, you might as well just buy one of those prefab kits of gallery frames, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with those, but they're pretty straightforward and you probably don't need any tips from me. And what if you're just struggling to commit to a gallery wall? You might want to consider utilizing picture ledges. This gives you the look of a gallery wall, but with the ability to move things around and try different arrangements whenever you want. Another tip is to get a little daring with your choices. Unusual pieces keep things cool and interesting. As long as you like it, go for it. And finally, experiment with composition. One of the biggest challenges with gallery walls is figuring out how to bring it all together. Now, there are lots of ways to go about this, and at this point, I'm pretty sure I've tried them all. If you struggle with visualization, you may want to turn to your computer for this. Upload photos of all of your art into whatever program you're comfortable with and try experimenting with arrangements that way. Now, this may be a little more time-consuming in the beginning, but you're probably going to save some time in the end making fewer mistakes. I did use this method when we were figuring everything out for Adrian's gallery wall, and it did help me help him visualize it. But But I usually prefer just to spread everything out on the floor and start experimenting with arrangements that way. I start from the center and work my way outwards, placing all of the biggest pieces first, and then going back and filling in the gaps with the smaller pieces. When it comes to spacing between pieces, I think you really just have to feel it out. They don't all have to have equal spacing in between them. Once I found an arrangement I like, I usually take a photo of it on my phone, and that way, as I'm picking pieces up to start placing them on the wall, I don't lose track. If you want, you can make templates out of paper and try those on the wall before you commit. You can even mark on the paper where the picture hanging hardware is located on the frames, just to make the hanging process a little easier. And my final gallery wall tip: remember that it doesn't have to be perfect. Imperfect groupings of art have character. They feel more authentic. And you live in a home, not a museum, so don't take it too seriously. Well, guys, I think that's pretty much everything I have for you about how to put art on your walls. I hope this video has been helpful, that I've shared some tips that you maybe haven't heard before. Thank you so much for being here. I hope we see you at the next one, and bye for now.